Hello everybody, I'm back with another review from the International Booker Shortlist. This is book 4 out of 6 for the shortlist, and this one is A Leopard-Skin Hat by Anne Serre, translated by Mark Hutchinson. This book was described to me as a portrait of a troubled young woman written shortly after the death of the author's little sister. And it's not clear from that description how far the main character is a depiction, a tribute of the author's sister, but the fact that they've mentioned that in the blurb suggests that there may be an element of auto-fiction in what is actually quite a moving character piece. A Leopard-Skin Hat is told in vignettes, and I think there's about 14, 15, 16 of them, and they're basically short snapshots, as it were, of this young lady's life. Obviously, I'm going to be talking spoilers, in the same way that Perfection was more of an overview rather than a story with a start, middle, and end. A Leopard-Skin Hat is more of a portrait and a character piece rather than an actual story as well. So when I say spoilers, it just means I'm going to be discussing what's in the book. But if you want to go in without knowing what's going to happen, then obviously read the book before watching the discussion. Fanny is the main character, and the story is told through the eyes of the narrator, who is an old friend of Fanny's. He's a little bit older than her, but they knew each other kind of in childhood and then connected again later on when they met each other again in adulthood. And there isn't anything romantic between them, but obviously the narrator is very devoted to Fanny and spends a lot of his energy and time basically trying to save her, trying to help her live her best life. But Fanny is battling demons in her head. She's been under psychiatrist, she's been taking medication, and within her there's this constant battle between wanting to be alive and wanting to be dead. So that's a constant struggle for her day to day. It's described as you never know which way the balance has fallen for her, because she's minute by minute kind of deciding within herself whether the good outweighs the bad. It's never actually made explicit. It's done as a kind of multifaceted statue where you're looking at different aspects of her character. And in the same way, because the narrator's external to Fanny, because it's not actually told from her point of view, you never get a full idea of what's going on with her. You understand that she's got emotional difficulties, that she disappears within herself, that she dissociates from the world, that her mood kind of goes from joyous to plummeting despair very, very quickly. And the way that she acts as well isn't consistent. You know, she's at once very charming, but then very tactless as well, and she'll kind of yo-yo between these different states. And it really is, like I say, quite a fascinating portrait of a woman who can be both extremely selfish and also extremely charming as well. There'll be a lot that's quite familiar about Fanny as a character. I've certainly met lots of people who are like her and who do ultimately not necessarily have happy endings. And they do have people who love them, who are constantly trying to save them, and who there is an unequal balance of power within their friendship roles. And it's something that rang very true while reading The Leopard-Skin Hat, and while reading A Leopard-Skin Hat, because there's something very authentic about it. Fanny feels real, and even though she behaves, very dismissively, for example, towards the narrator's own happiness, even though she doesn't want him to be happy if it's not her causing the happiness. Little things like that, which can make people can make people quite unlikable, but still you feel you understand her and almost forgive her in a way. And it's a very, like I say, it's a very interesting character study that moved me a lot. Now, Fanny does die aged 43, and we find that out very early on within the book. And there's an inevitability about knowing this. And the book is as much about her death as it is about her life. And obviously there's a lot of love. There's a lot of love for Fanny through the friendship that she shares with the narrator. And he brings her to life in the best possible light. You see so much about her that is compelling, and it's very, very difficult to dismiss someone who you see through the eyes of someone who loves them, even if, like I say, she's mean to kids, for example. These are not necessarily positive character traits, but you still feel that there is some kind of understanding, and she feels like a rounded human being who, has very much her own, her own troubles and her own battles to fight. I'm sorry if you can see a fly buzzing around, by the way. I don't know how it got in. It's been hanging around for days. I just hope you can't hear it buzzing, but I've got the mic, so we should be all right. My main problem with this book was not in the book itself, but in, unfortunately, the translation. Now, I could never be certain whether this is a translation problem or a prose problem, because obviously this is translated from the original French, and my French, although I can read basic French, I don't think I'd be up to reading an entire novella in its original language. I just don't think my language skills are up to it. And certainly, even if I could, I'm not sure I'd be able to judge the quality of the prose. It would be because I'd be focusing too much on trying to understand what was going on. But it reads in a very clunky way. And there are some grammatical, I'm going to say idiosyncrasies rather than errors, because you probably can put commas in those places. And obviously, it's not really fair to it's not really doing a translation justice if you're altering sentence structure. So it could be that in the original, the sentences run on too long, are grammatically marked in the wrong places, and, that it interrupts the flow. But my instinct is that this is probably a translation issue, and that the prose itself probably would flow better in the original French. I've got nothing to back that up, so someone who has read this in both would have to give me their opinion on that. I did find myself having to reread sentences, and when you're trying to be drawn into a narrative and you're having to reread sentences because they're kind of clumsy or clunky, it can be very frustrating, and it would have made it an issue if I wasn't determined to read this book. For obviously, because I'm making my way through the whole list, then I don't, I might not have persevered, or I might have put it down and not come back to it for a while, because I did find it quite frustrating. Having said that, there's some absolutely beautiful writing here. There was, and I think the Disco King mentioned this in his video about this book, a few metaphors that don't quite work. The term insatiable diplodocus did come up at one point, which made me smile, because what? But there were some truly lovely passages describing Fanny's relationship with herself and the world that really painted a marvelously poetic picture that I really appreciated. And I wish I found it easier to, if this was a book I was likely to be keeping rather than passing on, I'd probably have annotated it, because there's so much that I thought, oh, that's fantastic phrasing, this is beautiful. And it would probably be absolutely full of highlights if I had indeed if I had indeed wanted to go down that route. So I gave A Leopard-Skin Hat 3 stars out of 5, just because of, like I say, the prose didn't always flow right for me. But you do certainly get a broad look into someone's life, and it was very touching, and it was very moving, and you find yourself drawn into the tragedy of Fanny's life and what a shame it is that she couldn't quite put the pieces of herself into an order that would allow her to want to carry on living rather than things landing on the other side. So yeah, very, very sad. And exceeded my expectations in every way, because I don't find the cover appealing. I would never have picked it up if it hadn't been shortlisted. It was one of the lowest down on my priorities list to pick up, but still, I found myself, I don't think I'm going to forget about it. I think it does stand out as being, so from all the books I've read so far, this one definitely has the most vivid characters. And if you look for characters and connection within a book, then this will be way more your sort of thing than the others so far. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it because it broke my heart. And it's very difficult to say you enjoyed something that made you so sad. But certainly if you read, and I know we talked about what colour reader you are, in terms of the kind of red being your kind of high adrenaline and blue being your provocative literary fiction, this is definitely, as well as being a blue book, also a yellow book that very much kind of has the characters at the heart of it. So yeah, it will be for some people, I think, a standout book, because a lot of the other books in the shortlist are quite detached from the human aspect. They're very good pieces of writing. They're either political or groundbreakingly weird ideas. There's absolutely lots of good things about them, but this one definitely had more of a personal connection, which some people I think will find will stand out in the list. Anyway, I am halfway through Under the Eye of the Big Bird, but it's Sunday now and the winner is going to be announced on Tuesday, so I doubt I'll get it finished and a video done in time for the prize to be announced, but you may get a Hiromi Kawakami review slipped in soon. If not, I will see you at the results.